Hi friends, welcome to our channel Knowledge Factory UPSC. Today in this lecture we are going to discuss the second chapter of NCERT Class 8 and the name of chapter is Land, Soil, Water, Natural Vegetation and the Wildlife. It's a very important chapter regarding NCERT exams as well as state PSCs and UPSC examinations. So kindly focus on this chapter. It will always help you because there are certain important concepts regarding this examination, this chapter, which will be very useful for your future examinations. So kindly focus to this chapter itself. So let's start our video itself. Natural resources are anything that the people can use which comes from the nature, such as land, water, air, etc. So in the introduction of the chapter itself shows what is natural vegetation and what are natural resources. And we have already discussed what are the resources and what are the main types of resources and what are the important sources of resources. Those who does not see the video, kindly watch the previous video itself, so you will get a good continuation to this chapter. So what we have saying is the natural resources. That means natural resources are anything that the people can use which comes from the nature, such as land, water, air, etc. Okay, so we are going to discuss each and every concept in the great detail. So let's move to that. First of all, here we are going to discuss what is a land. The land is among the most important natural resources, and the land covers about 30% of total area of Earth's surface. Okay, so in the Earth, the land comprises of almost about 30% of total area. The 90% of world population occupies only 30% of land area, and the remaining 70% of the land is either sparsely populated or uninhabited. Okay, so it's a not such as important point because it's just a numerical figure. And the land is unevenly inhabited due to the various factors of the land and the climate, water, fertility of soil, etc. So in the earth, the land is unevenly inhabited. That means we cannot find a certain amount of population on all areas, because some areas are not populated due to its factors of the land, such as climate, water availability, and we can say that the agriculture, the soil fertility, etc. plays an important role in the humans in settling a particular area. Okay, and normally the sparsely populated or uninhabited areas are because of rugged topography, steppes or the slopes of mountains, low-lying areas, then such as the areas of waterlogging, deserted areas, and thickly forested areas. That means the places in which the people are not able to get settled, or there are some areas that we have all know that there are some areas on the earth that we cannot stay there or we cannot habitate it there because they experience large mountains, maybe high steeps, or the forest areas, or we can say that there will be low fertile areas. Such areas does not have, we cannot purely settle there because of such this rugged topography. So these are some areas which human habitation is very low. Then normally we can say that the densely populated areas of the world have plains, river valley, and we have suitable land for agriculture. Okay, so when we look into the Indus Valley civilization itself, we can say that the people of Indus Valley have already settled on the river bank that we have already know, on the Sindhu river banks. So why they settle there? Because the area is very fertile and equipped for cultivation. Okay, so the fertility of the soil plays an important role in habitation of the people. The availability of the rich and fertile land make it suitable for living, and the huge population resides on it. The mineral richness, water sources, fertility of the soil, and the good topographical conditions are also important. That means there are some points. That means there are some important factors that led to the inhabitation. They are mineral richness, water sources, fertility of soil, good topographical conditions are some important concepts which led to the people to settle in certain areas. Okay, I hope it is very clear to you. It's very simple topic, I think. Then the land use. The land use refers to the use of land for the different purposes such as agriculture, forestry, mining, building houses, roads and settling up of industries. Okay, so the land is mainly used for forestry, mining, agriculture, building houses, etc. The factors affecting the land uses are of two kinds: the physical factors and the human factors. The physical factors include topography of the soil, climate and availability of the water. The human factors include the population and the technology. Okay, so the physical factors, which are the physical factors? Physical factors include the topography, climate, vegetation, etc. And the human factors include what? They include population and the technology. On the basis of the ownership, land can be also classified as private and community land. Okay, so on the basis of the ownership, we can classify the land into private ownership and public ownership lands. Then the community land is owned by the community for common uses and it can be used by anyone in the society, like collection of fodder, fruits, nuts or the medical herbs. Okay, so there are some areas in our country or some in our village itself, we can find that they are not a private ownership, they are of public ownership, then that in which we can collect a food from them, we can collect a fodder from them, or else we can use that land because it is not a private land. Okay, so the private land is owned by the individual or the family members and is used for personal purposes like house and the private land. Okay, so the private land is owned by an individual and the public cannot take ownership on that private land. And we can also find that the private land is mainly used for cultivation. That means it can be used for cultivation or building houses, etc. Okay, then the demand for the land by the people in growing is, but availability of the land is also limited. That means the demand of the land of the people is growing because the population is also developing, but the amount of availability of the land is limited because because due to the high population we cannot satisfy the amount of land towards the people. Okay, I hope it's very clear to you. Then the vast changes in the land use pattern shows an cultural change in our society. Okay, and the land degradation, landslides, soil erosion, deforestation, desertification are some of the major threat of the environment because of expansion of the agriculture and the construction activities. So due to the human interference, the fertility of the soil, the availability of the soil, or even we can say the existence of the soil get destroyed due to some of these bad features such as deforestation, desertification, over construction, over development. Okay, then the fertile land is exploited more and it leads to the barrenness and it's not utilized for the judiciary. That means the over fertility of the land causes over agriculture and it led to the end of nutrition in the soil itself, and then the soil become barren and cannot be used for any other agricultural purposes. Okay, the over exploitation of the mineral resources also make the soil vulnerable for and degraded. That means if a land is filled with the mineral rich resources, human began to exploit and they started mining on this land and it led to the creation of the vulnerable. That means the soil become vulnerable because of over exploitation of these mineral resources, and finally that area also become a barren land or a useless land. Okay, so we want all these minerals and other things, but we have already discussed what is sustainable development in our previous lecture, and we have to take these resources sustainably so that these resources will be available for our future generation. Okay, then we have to know, or we can look into the point that the conservation of the land resources. So how can we conserve these land resources? The growing population and their ever-growing demand has led to the large-scale destruction of the forest cover and arable land and created a fear of losing the new natural resources. That is what we have discussed before. The present rate of degradation of the land must be checked. That means we have to check our present degradation of the land and we have to take the proper measure for stopping this degradation itself. Then the common methods used for the conserving the land resources are afforestation, land reclamation, and regulate the use of chemical pesticides and the fertilizers and check on overgrazing. That means when we are overusing the land for our own self uses, it led to the degradation of the land itself. And by making the rules and relating to the soil and the land conservation, and by making the farmers educated regarding the negative aspect of overgrazing and the overutilization of the fertilizers, the government can play an active role in preserving of the soil and land. That means government should take a first step for the preservation of the land by giving an actual that means giving an important role, that means providing an awareness among the farmers regarding overuse of land, over fertilization and overgrazing of the land. Okay, and by making the rules regarding the soil and the land conservation and making our farmers aware about this overutilization will also help in the development of our soil in the great detail. Then we can look into the factor of soil. The soil is a thin layer of the grainy substance covering the surface of the earth. So what is soil? Soil is a thin layer of grainy substance that cover the surface of the earth. Then the soil is made up of organic matters. The soil is made up of organic matters and the minerals and the weathering of the rock found on the earth. Okay, so the soils are formed due to the weathering of the rock found on the earth. It takes about hundreds of years to form the new centimeter of soil. That means it may take the hundreds of years for forming the soil by the process of weathering. The soil profile refers to the thin layer of structure which separate from the parent rock towards the top surface. The four layers of the rock profile are the first layer, that means the topsoil with the humus and vegetation. There are second layer with the subsoil with the sand and the silt. Then the third layer is filled with the weathering of the rock material, and the fourth layer is parent rock. So the soil mainly have the four layer. The first layer gets weathered and it forms soils. In different geographical regions, a different soil can be observed, and the various geoclimatical regions make the soil distinctions and the varied fertility occurs. And the different type of soils are suitable for the particular type of crops. That means for cotton cultivation, we can say that only black soil is very useful for our cotton cultivation. Like that, there are some crops which requires specific amount of crop, and that means specific amount of soil for their good cultivation and good results. Okay, and let's look into the point of the factors of soil formation. So let's look into that. The major factor of the soil formation is due to the nature of parent rock and climatic factors, and the other factors of the soil formations are topography, role of organic materials, and time taken composition of the soil formation. The parent rock determines the color, texture, and chemical properties of the minerals and the contents and the permeability of the soil. Okay, so the parent rocks plays an important role in identifying or in changing a form of soil into another form of soil. The relief determinants and the attitudes and the slope and accumulation of the soil. And then we can say that the flora and the fauna and the microorganisms affect the rate of humus formation in the soil. So another factor that leads to the formation of the flora and fauna is the humus content found in the topsoil. Then the climatic determinants, the temperature and the rainfall, which influence the rate of weathering and the humus in the process of soil formation. The time determines the thickness of the soil profile, and it takes hundreds of years for making just 1 centimeter of soil. That's what we have discussed before. The presence of microorganisms also plays very important role in the soil nutrient cycle and the mineral balancing. Okay, so the main factor that led to the formation of the mineral balancing is microorganisms. Okay, so the microorganism present in the soil itself also plays an important role in the composition and their mineral balancing of the soil itself. Okay, so let's see the next topic, that is the degradation of the soil and the conservation method. That means how can we degrade how the degradation of the soil take place and how to conserve the methods. That means how to conserve this degraded soil. The major threat to the soil erosion and depletion. There are some major threats. That means there are some major threats in our soil erosion and soil depletion. And the human beings and the natural factors are responsible for the degradation of the soil. So then the deforestation, overgrazing, overuse of chemical fertilizers or the pesticides, rainwater, landslides and the floods are the factors which led to the soil degradation. So deforestation, overgrazing, overuse of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, rainwater, etc. plays an important role in soil degradation. The soil conservation refers to the protection, efficient use of soil and the preservation of soil resources. Next, we are going to discuss some important terms which will be very useful for your examination. Let's see what is mulching. The mulching is a method in which the bare ground between the plants is covered with a thin layer of organic matters like a straw, which help in retaining the soil moisture. Okay, so after the cultivation, the balanced straw is used for covering the land, and in that way we can retain our soil moisture and which help in transferring it into a fertile land or soil. Okay, I hope it is very clear. Then we then look into the next concept, that is contour barriers. The contour barriers is a method in which the stone, grass, soil are used to build the barriers along with the contour. The trenches are made in the front of them to collect water. Okay, so the contour barriers means the stone, grass and soil is used to build barriers, and in that barriers the water is stored and thus the humidity of the soil is controlled. Then we can look into the point of terrace farming. The broad flat steps or the terraces are made to steep slopes so that the flat surface are available to grow crops, which reduces in the surface runoff and soil erosion. So it is an important way in which the surface runoff is reduced and soil erosion is maintained. Then intercropping is very different. Intercropping is also another method in which the different crops are grown in alternative rows and sown at the different times to protect the soil and from rainwash. Okay, that means the intercropping plays an important role in maintaining the soil nutrition, we can also say in that level. Then the contour plowing. The contour plowing is a process of plowing parallel to the contour of the hill slopes from the natural barriers to stop the water from flowing down the slopes. Then another method is shelter belt. That means rows of trees are planted to check the wind movements and to protect the soil cover. That means the trees are being planted for protecting the soil cover itself. Then the mixed farming and the crop rotation. The mixed farming and the crop rotation are also some of the important methods to improve the fertility of the soil. The excessive use of the fertilizers is also cause the soil degradation and leads to the loss of fertility. The use of high yield crop variety also cause the major concern towards our soil itself. So these are some important points that we have to know about our soil conservation and what are the main factors led to the soil degradation and how to conserve this soil degradation. Okay, I hope it is very clear to you. So let's look into the next topic, that is water. The water is a vital renewable resource and 3/4 of our earth's surface is covered with the water. Therefore, it is called as water planet, that we all know. Then the ocean water is saline and not fit for the human conservation, whereas fresh water accounts only 2.7 of the total available water. This is very simple concept that I think that I don't need to explain them because we have already discussed in our 6th and 7th standard. Those who does not check through that video, please check it in our playlist of the 6th standard geography. You will get the clear lecture of the water itself. Then the fresh water is the most precious substance of the earth. It can neither be added nor subtracted from the earth. The water is used for agriculture, industries, and generating the electricity through the reservoirs of the dam. The major causes of the water storage are increasing population, then we can say that the rising demands of the food and cash crops, increasing urbanization, and the rising of the standard of living. Okay, then the water is available through water cycle, and the water is constant movement from the ocean to atmosphere and back to ocean through precipitation. These are I think we have already discussed this concept in great detail, and the government had water conservation laws and has made the law against the pollution of water, and the proper implementation is need for an hour, because the water is an important concept. That means the water plays an important role in our daily life as well as industries and agriculture. So protecting our water bodies and creating the water, that means non-pollution of the water bodies are very necessary for our existence of human being. Okay, so it's our duty to protect our water body and conserve our water body. So let's see what are the problem of water availability. So let's see how can the problem, that means how does this problem in water availability occur. There is water shortage in many regions of the world, and it may be consequence of the variation of the seasonal or the annual precipitation or the scarcity in the cause of the overexploitation and contamination of water resources. That means the contamination of water resources, overexploitation led to the water scarcity in different areas. The countries located in the climatic zones are the most suspected through the droughts and face the great problem of water scarcity. Then the global warming and the high pace of industrialization also led to the rise of concern against the clean of water availability. That means over industrialization also led to the water scarcity. Okay, so the conservation of water resources. Let's see how the conservation, that means how can we conserve our water bodies. The major problem of the today's world is the shortage of the clean and adequate water sources. The steps should be taken to conserve water. The water is a renewable resource, but its overuse and the pollution make it unfit for the use. The sewage or the agricultural chemicals and industries, waste pollutants and etc. That means including our nitrate, the chemical compounds such as nitrate also led to the disintegration of our water body. The fresh harvesting method can also be used for the sufficient resources of the runoff of the canal through irrigation, and it also should be properly checked, and thus we can prevent our water losses. The rainwater harvesting is the process of collecting rainwater from the rooftop and directing it towards appropriate location where it can be stored for the future use. So the rainwater harvesting also a very important thing that help in development and that help in the conserving of our water body. Recycling plants should be installed to conserve water, and it will stop the water wastage. So we have to install the recycling plants. It will help in water conservation. Better irrigation facilities should be developed to conserve water. Okay, so these are some important concepts regarding our natural vegetation. So let's look into the next point of the natural vegetation. So we are going to discuss what is natural vegetation, conservation of natural vegetation and wildlife. Okay, so it is our last topic, so let's look into that. The growth of vegetation depend upon temperature and moisture, that we all know, and the forests, grasslands, shrubs, tundra are some of the major vegetation of the world that we have already discussed on our previous classes. Then the grasslands are the areas having the short stunted trees, and the grasses grow in the regions of the moderate rainfall. As the amount of moisture decreases, the size of trees and the density reduces. That means here also water plays or the moisture plays an important role in developing of natural resources. The thorny shrubs and shrubs grows on the areas of the low rainfall, that means on the desert areas, which help in reducing the moisture through transpiration. That means the plants in that areas are very small and it is fleshy due to it does not have so much leaf, which help in the lowering of the evaporation and the transpiration. And evergreen and deciduous are the type of forests depending upon they shed leaves. Okay, so the evergreen forests we have already discussed that it does not shed leaves, but we can say that there is deciduous forest which shed their leaves for reducing transpiration in summer season. Okay, then the trees of the evergreen forests do not shed their leaves simultaneously in any season of the year, and deciduous forests shed their leaves for the particular season to conserve the loss of moisture through transpiration. In India, mostly the evergreen and the deciduous forests are found, and which are the rich in sources, and timber are also being produced. Okay, so deciduous forest also plays an important role in the people in collecting their food and resources from the forest itself. Then in Himalayan region of the India, mixed forests are found according to their altitude, such as taiga, evergreen forest, deciduous forests are also found in Himalayan region. How can we conserve our natural vegetation and wildlife? It's very important because it will be always used. It is a question in the UPSC examinations, so make clear these points. Forests are our wealth. We have already know that the forests are our wealth because it plays an important role in acting as a lungs of our earth itself. The plants give shelter to the animals, and together they maintain ecosystem. Okay, and the changes in the climate and the human interference can cause the loss of natural inhabitants of the plants and animals. Poaching is also the most important major concern, which result in the sharp decline of the number of particular species. That means the hunting or illegal hunting in the forest areas, which also led to the decline of different kinds of species. To protect our natural vegetation and wildlife, natural parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and the biosphere reserves are to be made. Okay, so for protection of these natural vegetation and wildlife, several acts are to be in, such as the Indian Forest Act is there, because we have our duty is to conserve this forest because they are also a living organism and they have right to live in our earth itself. Due to the indiscriminate killing, and several birds and animals have become extinct, and there are some of them in the verge of extinction. Okay, and due to the awareness program like the social forestry and One Mahotsav should be encouraged, and the regions of the community level. So One Mahotsav should be encouraged in our panchayat level as well as the block and state level itself. So it will help in creating an awareness in the students and other people regarding the protection of our forests. It's the ethical duty of every citizen to conserve the plants and animals. Under Article 48A of Indian Constitution, the forest conservation has made towards a directive principle. Okay, so the forest conservation is included in our directive principles under Article 48A. Then the inclusion of the forest and the development of the Constitution play or to make the government of the India liable for their take and the steps in direction. That means it will always help in developing a good role in, that means the constitution itself create an awareness in our Indian constitution, so that no violence against these animals or the deforestation become illegal. And moreover that it's we humans in our earth, it's our duty to protect our earth, so we have to maintain our earth and natural vegetation. So these are some important concepts regarding this chapter. I hope it is very clear to you, and if you like the video, like it now, share with your friends, subscribe to my channel. Thank you.